You're with me, Namita Vishwanath, and I'm doing a series of interviews with different corporate leaders, business leaders, and leaders who are experts in their field. One of the best ways to grow as a leader is to learn, absorb, and implement leadership tenets and success principles from those who walk the path. And today I'm here with Mr. Rohit Sarin, who's the founding partner of Client Associates. He has over 25 years of experience and has been considered to be a pioneer in the space of family offices in India. He started his career with working with different banks, Deutsche Bank, Kotak Bank, ANZ, Grimleys included. And today he has created a wonderful organization which is also considered to be a pioneer in the family office space. Client Associates has received multiple awards, which includes being a 5 times winner of the CNBC-TV 18 Financial Advisors of the Year Award right from 2008 to 2015. And they've also received the AIWMI Best Family Office of the Year in 2019. And what's more important is that they have been considered to be the City Wealth Asian Family Office of the Year back in 2011. They have an average ticket size of rupees 25 crore and the asset under advice is USD 3.6 billion. So it's definitely an organization which has multiple achievements. They advise some of the wealthiest family offices and families in India. And one of the great hallmarks of great leadership is a leader giving credit to the team and being the fuel to create victory after victory, which I think the organization has proved in terms of its mettle with the number of awards it has received. As an organization, one of the best practices of Client Associates is declutter the desk. And one of the best practices of Mr. Sarin is waking up early in the morning and having a super power-packed day. So with that, I'm going to roll over the baton to him and ask him to share a little with us on the organization Client Associates, a little about the services that you provide, more achievements you'd like to share, and a little about your journey in this professional space.
Thank you, Namrata, for such a wonderful introduction. It's my pleasure and privilege to be interviewed by a leadership expert like you. In a very brief, I'll just give you a snapshot of what Client Associates is all about. It's a very unique organization like any other organization. We have our own uniqueness itself, that it's an organization which is focused on growing the affluence in the society. And that's our core business, that's our main business, which we do it by working as the family office for our clients, which are close to about 800 families across India and now beyond India as well. And we, in single line, I can define the work of the organization is to work as a CFO of the families we work with, basically working as the custodians of their wealth. Any problems that they may be having around their wealth, we try and seek solutions for them. So it's like a single window multifamily office for our clients to take care of the lifetime wealth which they've created so that it can be preserved and taken care of for the benefit of their generations. So that's what, and then I can go into details that this is the macro definition. Then of course, several other heads, what we do is around investment management, designing customized portfolios, that what should be the asset allocation for a client in the context of the mandate which we get from them, which is essentially around combination of 3-4 parameters. One of them, the most critical, is at what rate of growth they would want to grow their wealth. The second is, at what risk they want to grow this wealth at, and they're comfortable with. Is preservation a bigger goal or growth a bigger goal? So that, I think, the dynamics between that has to be understood very well as part of the mandate. Then third is your liquidity constraints. Fourth could be the jurisdictional constraints. So keeping all these factors in mind, we design a policy statement as per which, their wealth gets managed, it gets invested, and it gets monitored on an ongoing basis. So that's one of the core functions which we do for our clients. Beyond that, we built also various ancillary services around the needs of our clients over the years. For example, more than a decade back, we realized that on the total balance sheet of our clients, a large allocation used to be towards real estate assets. So which means they had a need to buy and sell real estate. So we built an in-house real estate team so that we can be very sure of the quality of delivery of the service which can be given to our clients instead of relying on third-party providers. Similarly, over a period of time, we built other specialist services. Like clients will have a need around succession of wealth during their lifetime. So estate planning was emerging as a very critical need. They may be having a need to start imagining to diversify with their wealth beyond India. And which means they may be wanting to invest internationally. So we should be able to help our clients invest internationally. They may be also wanting to acquire some assets for which they may need debt financing. So which is basically loans. If they're wanting to buy a residential asset, so maybe a home loan, or if they're wanting to expand their businesses, maybe a loan against property, and a whole lot of things. So that also the kind of a service which we provide. And also lastly, that the clients may have a need to invest in unlisted businesses and ventures as direct investments. And there may be ventures who may be wanting to raise capital. So that also, we've created an in-house investment banking team which helps our clients, address that part of around their wealth. So it's a combination of these whole lot of services, and it becomes we become like a single window office as a family office for our clients, addressing all these areas.
Most children, when they are children, they think about becoming a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, and this is a very unconventional space to venture. So what actually brought you to this space, and what was your journey that brought you here?
So this was early 2000s when I was a banker, a young banker, just been about 7 years into working with 3 great banks in this country, 1 domestic, 2 international. And I was hired as part of a startup team by a multinational bank to launch wealth business in India way back in 1999. When I worked with these banks, I realized that as India will get richer, as families will create that affluence, they will have a very strong need for somebody working for them. They will have a very strong need for somebody who's on their side of the table. Instead of young bankers like me essentially giving them products or pushing them products. So that was an imagination which occurred at that point in time, that when the scale of wealth in India, the scale of private wealth will become large enough, these needs of having confidentiality, continuity and control for the wealth owners will become pretty large. So that a new business model will be required to address those very sensitive needs. And so there was basically that imagination gave you a sense of an economic opportunity to be an entrepreneur, to create a platform which will be able to address these very needs, which probably large established banking institutions may take a very long period of time to evolve to address these needs, because they had a very different business model. So at that point in time, we looked around a business model which can address this very need, and came across the concept of family office, which was started in the US by the Rockefeller family itself to manage their own wealth. And when they kind of perfected the art, then they started offering it to other wealthy families, their peers in the US. And the concept was so very powerful that it kind of have grown ever since. The rest is all history. So we borrowed that idea. We thought that is, at the time, this is an idea probably whose time may come, maybe 5-10 years down the line, but it's always good to have a first mover advantage. So we introduced the concept of family office to India when nobody had heard of family office. Even Mr. Premji had not started his family office at that point in time. But the concept was so very powerful, so very client-centric, that it appealed to whosoever we took it to. And there was a growing need also. So I think it got well accepted by the audience. And since then, over the last 18 years, we've grown organically from scratch to working with close to about 800 families. We are a team of about 150 people working out of 7 offices in as many cities. So that's been our journey. I think it's been very, very gratifying. What we imagined 18 years back, me and my co-founder, I think the reality has really gone much beyond that. So that's what makes it very, very gratifying. Yeah.
In that journey, who were your role models or mentors who inspired you, and why?
Everybody has mentors and role models, because I always fundamentally believe in one concept, that nobody is self-made in this world. Everybody, wherever he or she is a contribution of the influences good wishes, support, encouragement of so many people around you. And I was also, I think, was extremely blessed to have such wonderful people around me, because especially at that point in time, I was very young. I was only 31 years of age, only 7 years of experience, and we had big dreams in the eyes. So naturally, I was helped by the experience and the wisdom and the maturity of these people around me, and these turned out to be some of our existing clients at that point in time, which were pretty senior corporate leaders at that point in time. I think they had not only built large organizations, but they were also leading and running pretty large organizations. So they had already been through their journey. And so I used to regularly go to them, and if we want, I can name, if that's fine, I can name some of them.
Sure.
So it used to be one Mr. Deepak Kapoor himself. At that point in time, he used to be a senior partner among the leadership team in PwC, and I was pretty sure that one day he will be the chairman of PwC India, and then eventually he did that. So I think he was one of my biggest mentors. Whenever I used to have any queries, any blind spots, I used to go to him, and I used to ask these questions and ask him that how you do this at PwC, and how can we do this at Client Associates. So I think then there was another gentleman called Mr. Anurup Poni Singh, who used to be leading the ANZ Grindlays Bank for South Asia before it got acquired by Standard Chartered. He was also a financial services leader and had led a few more banks before that in that role. And in fact, when I was at the crossroad when Stanchart was taken over, and he was the one who advised me that you should seriously consider the choice of entrepreneurship as a career, an option. And so I think these are the insights, and then of course there are several others. So these were some of the people I used to go to because they've already solved these problems in their journey. So I thought, let me also benefit from their wisdom much ahead.
Sure.
Instead of learning it over the next 10 years with them. So I think they were extremely helpful. I think by and large, the entire ecosystem of our clients. I'm just naming these two relationships, but there were quite a few, all of them. In fact, many of them were willing to believe in this dream and this vision from day one. They supported us with whatever little business they could give us, and there were so many of them who've been with us since day one from last 18 years. And so I think was truly blessed to be surrounded by such wonderful people who not only had rich experience and wisdom, but they were also large-hearted to share that and help you benefit from it.
Absolutely. Could you name any 3 activities that lift up your mood in a heartbeat? Some people it's listening to music. In your case, maybe waking up early in the morning is one.
Yeah.
And what else?
So I think there are several positive sources of energy which can be there for anyone in the day. For me also particularly, and for me particularly, I think the first hour in the day, which is just time before sunrise, I think is the most beautiful hour that I can experience during a day. And one has to really experience that to realize it. It's a wonderful experience because probably that's an hour when everything is at the lowest, be it your pollution, be it the vibes of stress of the world around, everything is relaxed. You're starting the day with an absolutely fresh note. Everything is like gives you a sense of a new beginning, and with a new hope, looking forward to your new day. And I think that the whole sight of sunrise is very, very enabling. That gives you, it's like you're gaining energy from the divine itself. And I think by just looking into it, you see that you are all set for another wonderful day of your life. So that's one thing. So mornings are very, very special for me. I've got 3.5 hours morning schedule, and I realized why it became 3.5 hours, because since mornings are so very enjoyable for me, if I have to do each one of those things, then I realize that the only way I can do that is by waking up that much early. If I want to do something which takes me an hour extra, then I might as well wake up an hour extra. And for that, if I have to sleep an hour early, I might as well do that. So I think my mornings are extremely special. I don't believe in the concept of rushed mornings, because then you're carrying that rush throughout the day. I don't believe in the concept of a rushed breakfast also. And so anything which is rushed in the morning, so I think morning is something which sets the day for me, sets the engine, and it really helps me to carry my day through because of that. Then of course, when the day comes on, then I walk into my office. I really charged up to always come and work to office because of 2 reasons. the work which I do, I think I'm very thankful and blessed that I'm in this profession, because I really love this profession, because I feel that the role of this profession is very significant in the whole society. Because I truly believe that, and that's where a larger purpose also comes, that since we are the custodians of wealth of the whole ecosystem, so essentially our role is to grow the affluence of the whole society. So which means every day you're coming to work, you're coming for a great purpose, which is basically leave the world better, richer than what you inherited. So that drives me to work. And second is, I think we've got wonderful team, and I think these are a bunch of, I would say, genuinely angelic souls, and the positive energy and the vibes which you get with them. You want to work harder, so make sure that you are able to do justice to their dreams. And so I think that's the second part of the workday life. And the third part is, of course, when your work is finishing, workday is finishing, go back to your family. And so you start your day early, finish your day on time, and then so that you can have family time. So nothing is stressed, neither the morning is stressed, nor the work day is stressed, nor the family time is stressed. So family is the third source of positive energy. Even if you spend half an hour quality time with them, you realize what it means to you. So thankfully, I'm able to spend not half an hour, but at least 2 hours every evening with the family, or myself within that me time, family time, and before I hit the bed, which is usually around 10:30. So broadly, this is the way my day is structured.
So I have, in fact, two very big takeaways from what you just shared. One is you need to have that larger purpose and why to drive you, to wake you up every morning. And you mentioned that there are things which contribute to the positivity in the organization. The organization has a lot of positive vibes. And when I visited you last time, and even today, as I see the organization, I can really feel the positivity in the organization. What does leadership mean to you? And do you have any secret recipe for success? And can you share the secret?
So as an expert, Namrata, leadership expert, you will know more than me about leadership. I can just share my own perspective, which is a function to my own immediate experience. So I think this is a very vast subject. And my own learning is based on experiential learning, and not, of course, what good things you learn from management books in this. Because there is no perfect answer for leadership. So coming from my own learning and perspective, I can tell you what good leadership is all about. The way I look at it. I think first of all, any good leader has got a very important role and towards his audience and whosoever are believing in him. I would not like to call them followers, because at the end of the day, there can be a leader in everybody. But somebody who's believing you and trusting your wisdom. The first most important role of any leader is that you kind of help people, your audience, which is believing in you, to lift their conviction about where they can be and not just where they are. Right? So basically helping them believe about what all they can do and not just what they're doing now. So they're helping them expand their vision, set an agenda that you are here today, but you can be 10x over a period of time. So I think that is the biggest help a good leader can do, because he has to uplift the whole ecosystem around it. Right? And that they can do by demonstrating their own conviction, by the cliched things like leading by example, leading from front. That's where it comes from. Because at the end of the day, see, if you have a conviction about something as a leader, then you have to pass on that conviction to the set which is working with you.
Sure.
And by doing that, if you're able to lift their conviction, then what you've done at the end of the day, you've lifted all of them up, right? So then what you've done, you've transformed lives.
Yes.
Then what you've done, you've given them lives which could be very different than what they would have led on their own. So I think that is the starting point. The leader, any good leader, has to set a very, very expansive but very doable and practical agenda for a vision, which everybody should look up to. You can call it a dream, you can call it a belief or whatever. That's number one. Number two is that I think every leader, and it's coming for my own, the way I relate to leadership, has to be a very responsible person also. Because what a leader is, at the end of the day, see, in any set, if somebody is a leader, then how he or she becomes a leader, because he or she knows more than people he is leading, right? That's what at least the audience is believing, that you know more than me. And if that is the case, then that be it the case, then the person is supposed to know more, isn't it? Otherwise, then you will be setting up an agenda which will be based on unreal things, something which is only imaginary, something which is not doable. So first of all, a leader has to be really knowledgeable himself. He has to really know much more than what his audience is believing in him, because the audience is really trusting his wisdom, right? So that wisdom has to be time tested. So he has to actually be knowledgeable and know more than what the people are believing in, because you're showing the way to the people, right? So if you yourself don't know the way, you yourself don't know the destination, then it'll be just like a Pied Piper. You'll take people the wrong alley, and will end up harming people who are believing in you. Second part of responsibility is that I think the conduct of the leaders themselves. I think it's very, very critical, this in leadership and people who are believing in the leadership. It's a very, very, very sensitive relationship where they're trusting you, built on trust, because they're blindly trusting you, isn't it? That you're telling them, okay, we will get there. They're willing to walk with you to get there. So in this journey, many a times, leaders are kind of come up with choices where should they make a choice which is first for the benefit of the larger good or their own self-good. So I think good leaders, or I would say leaders, are the ones who are very clear that if I have to have a choice, then I will only pick up the choice which is first good for the larger benefit. And some of the cases which we are seeing these days, I think they are very poor and sad examples where I would not even like to call them leaders, where they made those choices which are good for them and not for the people whom they were supposed to lead. So I think that is coming from the responsibility which a leader has. And third thing which I believe is, for any good leader, I think he has to create more leaders. Because see, we all are mortal souls, right? We all have finite time. And within that finite time, the role which we play in leadership is also even more finite. So we are not going to be forever leaders. So if leaders are so very essential as enablers for the ecosystem, then you have to, as a responsible leader, has to then create more leaders as a legacy planning.
Yes.
So I think a sign of a good leader is that he doesn't centralize everything in himself, and he creates more responsible souls, people who can carry more stuff on their shoulders for a future period of time, so that things will not even just keep running, but they will run better when this person is not around. So if somebody has done that, for that kind of a leader, personally, I have a lot of respect, because this is a real, people call leaders visionary. For me, only that kind of a leader is visionary, who's created a kind of a line of succession, because he's not thinking, his vision is not restricted to the next 5-10 years, but probably next 30, 40, 50 years.
That's incredibly long term, yes.
Yeah.
And it lays a solid foundation.
That's right.
Yes.
Because the show has to go on.
Yes.
You may or may not be there, but society has to be there, right? And there has to be somebody to continue to show them the path. So that's where this legacy planning is extremely critical.
Absolutely. And perhaps more leaders would benefit by thinking with that vision.
Yeah.
And help others also grow with them.
That's right.
People talk about corporate leaders, people talk about business leaders, and at the end of the day, would you agree that the nature of challenges they face are similar, or would you say that they are distinct?
In case of a business leaders
and corporate leaders, or would you say one is a subset in a way of the other?
But my understanding of that would be anybody who's in a leadership position in the business world.
Yes.
It could be business owners, it could be professional managers, but at the end of the day, they're in a leadership position in a business world.
Yes.
So yes, there could be a subtle difference between business owners' responsibility leadership and those of professional managers, because again, for the legacy kind of a thing, because business owners, the way they are distinct than professional managers is that they have the responsibility of legacy planning, legacy management, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with them. As far as professional managers are concerned, they will complete one leadership assignment in one place. They can always, continue that journey at some other place. So legacy planning, while it's important for them also, but not as critical as business owners. But by and large, I think the principle of leaderships apply, as I just spoke to you, equally to both of them. Because, whether you are a business owner or whether you are a professional manager,
yes,
right? You need to give vision to your audience. You have a huge responsibility towards the audience, which is trusting your wisdom and leadership. And at the end of the day, you also have to have a business continuity plan. Even if legacy continuity may not be there, but business continuity is there even for professional managers. So as they scale their teams, as they scale their businesses, within that they have to be conscious of planning the next level of some leadership to whom they can pass the baton.
Now, how important is the role of a leader in building a good work ethic and culture in the organization? Also, there's a lot of stress if you look around on building a high IQ, but a lot of people miss out on building the EQ and relationship aspect. So, how important do you think that is in a leadership role and in a leader?
No, definitely. I think I'm very happy that you asked this question because this is something which I myself believe in. Because I think world has come a long way and it's a natural evolution. And with evolution, I think everybody matures. The ecosystem has also matured. So from the good old world, we used to believe only in IQ. I think people have started realizing that EQ is important. And beyond EQ, also the world is going where they realize SQ is important, which is the spiritual quotient.
That's a new one.
Yeah, that's a new one because why this is important is because every situation is a people situation, and people are basically human beings. Things like EQ, IQ, I relate with them, and I have my own, I strongly feel about that the world has over the years has evolved because with experience, maturity comes and evolution happens. So I think the good old days in management thinking, it used to be that you need to have people high on IQ, but over a period of time, everyone realized that every situation, whether it's a business situation, is a people situation, and people situation you basically are dealing with human beings, right? So which are kind of made by God and blood and flesh, so they will have feelings also. So I think emotional quotient is, if not more, is equally important as IQ, and I would say that's even more important than IQ. And now I would say the world has even moved to the next step of called an SQ, which is spiritual quotient. These are people who are really evolved and who are not only they understand and appreciate the importance of IQ, EQ, but also the SQ, the spiritual quotient. So your vision just expands because of that, and that's the reason you see that today many people. Businesses are realizing the importance of what is the larger purpose of the business. That's where the SQ is coming from. So I think yes, this is extremely important for any good leadership to have, I think, a good blend of all these three things. Because without a good IQ, you'll not be able to really build a meritorious team. Without having a high EQ, you will not be able to build a people-centric and a people organization, a people-centric leadership, a people-centric culture. And without SQ, you will not be really able to build a sense of purpose, a sense of fulfillment amongst the organization, because then people will just do their job. And they will come in the morning, they will work hard with a lot of IQ, they will collaborate with each other with IQ, but they'll just go back home. So they'll not be able to really bring in that X factor. So that's where SQ really helps. And so these are extremely important leadership qualities which should be there amongst all leaders, and they impact the organization in a very, very positive manner. Within this also, one particular thing which I feel is extremely important for any leader to set an organization is a performance culture. Because, and we keep talking about this within our organization a lot, and performance is just not relegated to a performance measurement. Performance is a huge thing, and because it can really impact the entire ecosystem. And how it can impact is somebody who is performing, what is he doing? At the end of the day, he is creating more affluence. Right? Somebody is performing what in terms of business, he's done more business. He's done more business, which means he's created more resources for doing more business in the future. And somebody who's not performing is actually pulling down everybody else. And we can have, see these real life examples around us from all over the world. For example, let's take an example of EU. There are certain countries which are doing extremely well. There are certain countries which are finding it very hard to pay their debts also. Right? So because somebody is not performing, they pull down the whole ecosystem. And because somebody is performing, they're able to sustain the entire ecosystem. So that's the importance of performance. So our take on performance is that, and that's where leaders should give a thrust on it, which should be much beyond performance measurement, is that if we are not performing, we are making the society poorer. Right? So we are just pulling down the entire society if we are not performing. So I think that's also one of the good practices, best practices, which leadership should focus on, a culture of performance. Whatever somebody is doing, irrespective of the job, one should make sure that you are doing to the best of your ability. And that's why amongst our key core values, excellence is number one, where we believe that whatever job you're doing, make sure that you are the best person in the world to do that job. Right? So I think that's where it comes from, and that's where performance is linked. And if your input is in terms of excellence, your output will automatically happen. So that's what also I think leadership should focus on in organizations in creating that, because it helps to increase the productivity of everybody.
Two questions which just came from this answer which you gave. One is, what do you do specifically to accelerate the performance of the team? Are there any specific actions that you take? Number one. Number two, one thing which I have seen in some organizations, especially in organizations where there is a lot of wealth already, they are the best and most reputed brands, and you have certain stalwarts who've been with the organization for many, many years. And after a certain point of time, they have achieved the wealth that they needed in terms of their targets. They have achieved their work-life balance. And then they stop really performing in the organization because they feel their personal targets are met. What would be your advice to organizations like that?
So I think everything else probably kicking very fine in these organizations. I think they're focusing on IQ certainly very well, probably EQ also very well. But what is missing in this organization is the SQ. Right? Because when some people, what you're saying is that when they are kind of intellectually or emotionally they're saturated, so there is no fire in them, no desire in them to now, so they're kind of saturated in life. So the moment you de-link your job vis-a-vis the immediate numbers, so then, and you link it with a larger purpose, then it's a limitless life. Then basically you kind of merge your work life into your overall life, which you're leading, or for that matter everybody is leading because of a larger purpose. Then nobody has to tell you, to work so much or don't work so much, because at the end of the day you are the driver of your own life, you are the leader of your own life. I always believed when I worked for a short stint of 7 years with banks, why should a boss need to tell me how much I need to work? He's told me this is what I'm expecting, I'll deliver. Because they're two adults, he's given me the brief, I've understood. He doesn't even need to ask me, and if he's asked me, then I think something is missing in me if somebody has to follow up with me. So you take charge, everybody should take charge of their own lives. And in that taking charge of your life, you're not restricted by these boundaries. Boundaries of times, boundaries of effort. And in any case, these days we are all living in an age of 24/7. So you can pick and choose your time vis-a-vis your plan of the day, and you have to be driven by your own motivation. There is a big thing in leadership is that one big task of leadership is to motivate. I would say I have a different contrarian view on that. I think the biggest thing of leadership is that they should not demotivate. But at the end of the day, everybody has to motivate themselves. Right? Leaders have to set an agenda, but their task is not to motivate. Right? So the moment you bring in the rescue element, then everybody is motivated, because then they are doing things to live their own life and not meet the numbers of the organization, isn't it? So who at the end of the day motivates me? It's me, myself. Absolutely. If I'm not doing it, then definitely I will be helpless, isn't it? So I think that's the way. So I think that's the way to address that. We have to help people transcend beyond the limitations of the time boundaries, the goal boundaries, and so on and so forth. They have to live a life which is a larger life linked to a larger purpose.
What are the specific things that you do to elevate the team's performance in your organization?
Yeah, so I think one is beyond that, setting this overall agenda linked to the overall purpose, which I think lifts everybody, helps them take charge of their own lives on an ongoing basis, day-to-day basis, since you're running an organization. So I would do a combination of things, which is kind of must be privy to my own style, and every style I think has merit. There is no perfect styles or perfect those tick box, check box things, those 5, 10, 8 things like in management books. So I realize what works for me is the number one, to set an agenda in terms of setting the goals. So I think you should have clearly defined goals which are easily measurable and also doable. Stretch goals with doable goals. So first of all, set the agenda in terms of quantified goals which you have to reach, like a destination. So we set that at the beginning of the year. Then monitoring how you're progressing towards those goals. So then we have got review exercises, which typically will happen on an average with some teams on a monthly basis, with some teams on a quarterly basis. And the third, the most important thing, in between these two things, let everybody be. Give them the space to go and achieve those goals basis their own style. There is no need for you to have a daily calls or a weekly calls or checking. People feel accountable when they have clearly defined goals, and then at a defined frequency they are coming and having a review mechanism for that. But during that time period, you just let them be, because if they're intelligent people, most likely they'll figure it out how to achieve their goals.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's what typically I do. And I think setting goals and this setting performance culture, setting a culture that achieving goals is extremely critical. I think these are some of the things which really help people to lift themselves up.
So one thing I noticed as I walked into client associates, I saw, you have quotes like you have think big right behind, and there are many other inspirational quotes. So what, according to you, are the elements of making a great workplace? I think this is definitely one of those.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think, again, there's so many good things which can make any place, the vibes of that place so very good. Yeah, quotes definitely, they bring that kind of these are thoughts, each thought can be a trigger.
Absolutely.
So the moment you write think big, every time you walk into this room, it is kind of just staring you into the face. So even if you're not thinking big, this will kind of trigger you that, let's think big.
Yes.
So they definitely have their role to play. And so you can see entire office throughout we have it. Then amongst our meeting rooms and conferences rooms, we named after people like Rothschild, Rockefeller, because the idea was to bring in, the wealth consciousness. We are into the business of only wealth. So let's be surrounded by people who are creators of wealth and who are also able to not just create wealth but also keep wealth across generations. So these things definitely have a role to play. But other thing is, I think in a good workplace is that have a very good culture. And one critical, I think, factor in a good culture, which I think we've been very lucky to do in our workplace, is that have no internal competition. Because I think many organizations across the world use this as a tool for productivity. They make their people compete with each other. And I think that's, and I could be wrong, I feel that's not correct, because then you are just kind of exploiting people one against the other. And there should be no internal competition. The only competition, if at all, it should be with your competitors, not with your peers or colleagues who are sitting next to each other. So that really doesn't generate stress.
You mentioned about building a legacy and thinking far ahead, not just from the space of the leaders 10 years or 20 years, but going 20, 30, 40 years beyond by building the second line of leaders. So what would be the key actions that a leader can take to build the second line of leaders?
Yeah, first of all, I think clearly a leader should be able to identify people in his team around him who would have the keenness and the ability both to carry the responsibility towards people along with him or after him, and so on and so forth. So I think that identification has to be there. Then that identification has to be tested during his course of his lifetime or professional time to give them actual responsibilities to run those leadership roles, so that it really gets validated over a period of time. And then over a period of time, see, you can create leaders only by empowering them, only by allowing them to take decisions, right, which they should be taking, because otherwise they themselves never be able to figure out whether the decisions that they are taking are right or not, because see, all of us learn by committing mistakes. So that experiential learning from the University of Life has to happen, and that can only happen if you allow people around you to take decisions. And so I think in that process, the journey, then people will really get filtered. Some of them who really enjoy that role will stick around, some will not, will come up to you or will not want to expand the scope of their work. And this is how it will evolve. So I think you have to create that band of, you can say, angels, which will continue to do the good work. And when the organization is scaled and requires more leaders.
You mentioned one thing very interesting right now. You said learning from the university called life even making mistakes.
Yeah.
And what is the one mistake you find team members and leaders most frequently making?
Biggest mistake which we all do is by the decisions we make. Because see, nobody is perfect, right? There's always one decision in life. In fact, there are many more of them, which we would be taking, all of us, for the first time in life, isn't it?
Yes.
It's there in the personal domain also. The first time you choose a life partner, the first time you get married, and so on and so forth. First time you decide to become a parent. So I think there's so many decisions similarly in the professional side of the life also, which we'll all end up taking for the first time.
Yes.
And some of them are bound to go wrong. And in that only, there's a learning, because now okay, I shouldn't have taken this decision, so next time I'm not going to repeat it. And I think that is the best learning anyone can have. So I think I can only speak for myself. I am not for others' experience, but I think classroom learning has its own advantages, but serious limitations, because you're not really able to relate to the real life. But what you really learn in real life stays with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's how that's the best way to keep learning in life.
What should the approach of a leader be towards someone in his team who's made a mistake?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so leaders also need to be conscious that in their journey to the leadership role, they've also committed many mistakes, and they're still committing mistakes, right? And if they sincerely believe that this is the best way, this is the best training program anybody could have, so then definitely, you need to kind of accommodate people. You need to give them a second chance. I think what is important is that you need to give people a chance, a second chance. But do not really accept the repetition of those mistakes, because then that's a sign that somebody is not learning from mistakes, that he has also been through the training program but still not really applying in his or her life. So I think you have to have that maturity to understand that when people are given the responsibility to take decisions, they will commit mistakes. But if they're quick learners, they're mature enough to learn from their mistakes, then I think that's a very good news for the entire organization.
And let's spin it the other way around, which is most teams put the leader on a high pedestal, treat the leader like a god, and if the leader makes a single mistake, he's brought down in terms of their vision and perspective. So what would your advice to people be in terms of viewing a leader and realizing that leaders are also human beings? And
no, definitely. So I think there is a human side to it. So I think definitely high expectations get built, and I think good leaders will even build higher expectations. And when they are not able to meet up to those expectations, then definitely they'll lead to dejection. That's a very natural phenomenon. But I think at the end of the day, it's also a sign of good leaders to have a more participative leadership, so that everything is not just centralized with them. Because see, in the participative leadership, if people are involved in that as a journey, then to an extent, I think this issue can be, the whole everybody kind of expecting only for one single person can be reduced, because see, everybody is then walking together. Yes, the buck stops at the end of the day with the leader, and it should also, because at the end of the day, if you've got that role, then you also need to carry the responsibility of taking the right decisions, having the right, because at the end of the day, everybody was trusting you for your wisdom, right? So that's where the accountability in leadership also comes from. So I think both things are important. That leadership should also be accountable, and that is extremely important for good leadership to continue. Leadership without accountability can be extremely dangerous, and we are seeing several examples of that around us.
Absolutely.
So I think that is very, very critical. But having said that, I think good leaders in any case will develop a culture of participative leadership, so that the risk of centralization, in one key man is not there, right? And then the expectations also are there from all of us, all a senior team, and not just one single person.
Absolutely. And people do ask, how does one think like a leader? How does one think like a CXO? You've been in a leadership role for a very long time. So how do you think in a way?
Yeah, very interesting question. So I think I relate with somebody in this role. Leadership is very similar to that of a parenting. And we've had this internal workshop session with the senior people, and we have kind of drawn parallels between that role in the family and the leader's role in the business situation. I think it's very, very similar. As a parent, what you do, you will definitely, you have a huge sense of commitment, responsibility towards your family, isn't it? You'll never think anything bad for your family. All you are thinking of is, how can I take my family ahead? How can I give my family more resources? How can I give them more exposure? Right? The same thing, I think, as a good leader in an organization has to, the example is that of a role is that very similar to that of a parenting. If we can have that role at our homes, why can't we have that role in an organization? It is just part of the same life. Why should we treat our family differently than we treating our family at work? This is just an extended family. Right? When that happens, then I think that that role becomes even more enjoyable, because the sense of ownership is far, far different. It's far, far bigger. Then any leader is just not doing a CXO role, isn't it? So he also realizes he's able to connect with an SQ. He's able to bring in SQ in his role also. That there is a larger purpose in his role also. That like this way he or she can impact his family, same he can do in family at work also. And I think anybody who's in the leadership role, they should go to work only if they have this sense of purpose. Otherwise, they should give it up.
That's a very strong statement, and I think that's what will motivate people to be good leaders as well. What are the typical challenges in crisis situations that leaders face, organizations face? Sometimes crises and challenges are internal, self-created. Sometimes it's external and it's beyond the control. What is your advice to someone who is actually in those challenge or crisis situations?
See, we are all living in dynamic times. Challenge is a different word for dynamic times. Currently, also a lot of excitement and dynamic things are happening, be it coronavirus or the way the economy is going and stuff like that. But I think that's part and parcel. We are living in a dynamic world. Some things will, at any point in time, will always keep happening. But I think good leaders have to stay the course. And as they said that, good sailors are only made when they go through a few storms, right? They will not be made by sailing in the lake. So I think leaders have to kind of embrace this, these dynamic times with a sense of faith, a sense of, again, responsibility. And I think what they have to do is that they, in these critical times, that they have to help the team to keep the faith, to keep thinking that, you are in it for a life and not for next quarter or 2 quarters, right? So it's like, this is not going to be permanent. The world is really not coming to an end. So have a very pragmatic, very positive outlook towards life, that, at the end of the day, this is just a phase.
Yes.
This is going to go away, without losing sight of realities also. So I think the leaders, they really have to keep their teams, people who are trusting them, believing in them, to continue to keep the faith, which is the most important thing any good leadership can do in trying times, because that's the time when the faith is really going down.
Yes.
Fear is taking over. So I think that's the time the good leadership has to really step up and really, really again address it upfront. That the world today is not the last day of the world. But let's be mentally prepared that there are turbulent times and they'll go away.
Absolutely. One interesting thing which I've seen, and it's very normal for most individuals and teams and organizations who don't have the SQ aspect, which is that what drives them is the external aspects, like the profits, the salaries, the appraisals, the promotions, and they sometimes miss out on the key internal things or building the right leadership skills. Do you see, or do you feel that there is a connection between building leadership skills and a benefit to their external targets?
Building leadership skills for
in themselves, for leaders themselves, and in their teams, in the organization, and how it can impact the external aspects, like profits and business or career growth.
The easiest answer to this would be what we have grown up with, learnings from our own culture. Our culture gave us Gita, in which says that the only right you have is on your action and not on the fruits. And that's where I think SQ also comes from, right? So at the end of the day, yes, profits are extremely important. Achieving your targets is extremely important because that's for the sanctity of the goal-based culture. Because if you're not growing, then we are dying.
Absolutely.
And if you're dying, then all of us are out of it, right? So that is extremely important. But there can be different ways to achieve that. One could be that you remain focused on your output, which is your profits, numbers. One could be you remain focused on your input, which is your own karma, your own action. Rest will follow. So some people, remain focused that I need to be so much of wealthy by this date. I need to have so much of thing. Nothing wrong with it. That's one way of looking at life, and there could be merit in that as well. And that's also could be a kind of a goal. But then you're focusing on the output. The other way could be, okay, I have to do so much of input in this point in time. I have to do so much of effort invested in next 30 days, next 90 days. I have to, expand my business, invest in my business, bring in so many resources. These are all input. These are all actions, right? If you're investing, then investment will lead to return in any case. Right? Till the time your investment calls are judicious enough, they will definitely lead to an ROI. So growth is bound to come. Right? But if you keep on, suppose as an investor also, you keep on thinking that I need 20% return. You will not be able to figure out your actions, what you need to do to achieve a 20% return. Or let us say if your output is, I don't need 20% return, I just need to preserve my wealth. But you'll be able to achieve that output by taking certain input. So I think it has to be always input focused. Keeping in mind that yes, your goals like profit and growth numbers is very, very critical, but always you focus on your action. If you're focused on that, your output will always be a follower. It has to follow you. So let your output follow you. Instead of you chasing an output, you chase your input. Make sure what you're supposed to do, you've done that. And then just leave the fruits, to the larger ecosystem. It'll just follow you in its own way.
I think you've just pioneered and created the leadership wealth formula for success.
There are millions of people who think like that. I'm just one of them. But in fact, why million? The whole Indian civilization, thinks like that. That's been our legacy. That's all we have grown up with.